All right. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you guys doing? Welcome back to the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media. My name, as always, is Zach. And today I'm going to be doing a live stream just kind of recapping what's been happening this week in college football. If you've been checking ESPN at all, you know that there's a lot going on this week. And then I'll also be doing some Week 8 preview games. I'll be talking about Oregon and Rutgers, obviously. But I'll also be talking about Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Ole Miss. There's some big games this weekend. So let's jump right into it. So I'll start first with the analysis of what has happened this week. I would love to hear from you guys. What did you guys think about the James Franklin firing? We've talked about that over the last couple of live streams. Who do you guys think about potential replacements? So obviously I agreed that James Franklin should have been fired. And I'm pretty shocked that given the buyout amount that Penn State actually went through with it. But I have heard rumors that Adidas was actually pushing for Franklin to be fired after they lost to Oregon. I think it's because Nike is so tired of being seen as second, Adidas is so tired of being second to Nike and seen as second to Nike, and that they lost to like the Nike school, and so they just didn't want to tolerate that. So I think that was a big motivating factor for them. And if you don't know, Penn State just signed a few weeks ago, signed a massive deal with Adidas to switch to Adidas. So they are allegedly going to pay every bit of the buyout of James Franklin. And then also, I don't know if you guys have also heard well, but James Franklin, he's not going to be compensated the entire $49 million buyout. There's a clause in his contract that he has to look for another job. So it's pretty standard language in contracts for college football coaches that let's say they get fired or they leave, let's say they get fired and then they get another job. And let's say their new job is paying them $2 million and their buyout would cost the university $8 million a year. The university only would have had to pay the additional $6 million. So it's kind of a bridge the gap salary. That's standard language in coaching contracts. Like I know that's in Billy Meeker's contract, and that's most likely going to be executed this week. But I've never heard of it that he has to look for another job. That's an interesting plus. He has to look for a job in either coaching or broadcasting, obviously, because they want to make a decent amount of money. So the buyout isn't as large. So I think it's a good move by Penn State. I think it's tough to be a Penn State fan right now, but ultimately I think it's the best long-term decision. It's a little tough in the short term, but I think they reached their peak with James Franklin, and that's not where they want to be, right? They don't just want to be a 9 or 10 win a year team. They want to be contending for national titles and Big Ten titles, and they unfortunately just haven't been that under James Franklin. Now let's talk about possible replacements. I think the most obvious one so far is Matt Rule. Obviously, Dan Mullen's name has been thrown around. I don't think so, just because he hasn't had enough, I'm going to say, rehab years. Yes, he's doing great things at UNLV right now, but I think Penn State wants to see a little bit more proof of with this hire. So I think it's going to be a big hire. Curt Cignetti's name was being thrown around until earlier, a few hours ago, whenever Curt Cignetti got that massive contract. So he's obviously not going anywhere. I think Matt Rule is probably the most obvious one right now. And if I was a betting man, I'd probably put money on Matt Rule being replaced with Penn State. He was a linebacker for Penn State in the 90s, and I think that's just the next logical step for him. He's made Nebraska cool. Again, I absolutely envision a world where Matt Rule takes Dylan Raiola and goes to Penn State next year. I think that's absolutely in playing cards. Another name I kind of like, but I don't think so, is Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. I think that's an interesting name, but I don't think so. But I think Penn State's going to make a big hire here. They can't really mess with this one, especially with Adidas paying the buy Franklin. Like they want to win. They want to win now. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear from you guys. Who do you guys think is going to replace James Franklin at Penn State? Do you guys agree with the decision? Do you disagree with the decision? Let's see. Urban Meyer's name was being thrown around. I don't think so, because also Urban Meyer suggested Dan Mullen, who was his offensive coordinator at Florida. And I think Urban Meyer's actually done this time. I'm just double checking to see if there's any. Oh, and then there's Duke's Manny Diaz keeps getting thrown around. I don't know. Like he did great things when he was a defensive coordinator, but the problem is that the defense has never been their problem, right? Like this hire not only has to be the correct hire, but also has to optically be good, right? Because we live in the world of NIL and the transfer portal, so optically it has to be appealing to boosters. It has to be appealing to new recruits and transfer recruits. And I just don't think that Manny Diaz. I don't think he's a big name. I don't think he'd appease the fans. I don't think he'd appease the boosters. So I'm not a fan of that hire. I don't think Galen DeBoer's going anywhere, so that name's been thrown around way too often for my liking. Those are probably the big names that are out there right now to replace James Franklin. I wouldn't mind Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri. I think he's done great things. He really likes it in Missouri, and if I remember, he's a local kid, though. So I don't know. Versus Matt Rule, I think he's the most obvious hire. Just looking at some names. PJ Fleck from Minnesota, no, he hasn't had enough success. I don't hate Al Golden, the current Cincinnati defense coordinator, but again, just what I said about Manny Diaz is an optics thing, hiring a defensive coach when offense has been your woes throughout the entire James Franklin tenure. I just don't think optically that's a good hire. I like Al Golden, and I would like to see him back in college ranks as a head coach somewhere. I think Brian Hartline is interesting, but after speaking to one of my subscribers, Jared, you tune in at some point, he's a big Ohio State guy. He's saying that Ohio State fans are a little leery of Brian Hartline right now, and I don't know if he's had enough success as a coordinator versus a wide receiver coach to really warrant a hire. Then the other name that I've seen thrown around is Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman I really like as a head coach. To me, Notre Dame's just one of those few jobs in college football that you just leave, right? So I don't really see why you leave Notre Dame. He's being paid handsomely. He has everything he needs. He loves Notre Dame. The only job I would ever see Marcus Freeman leaving for is Ohio State. But again, even Jared said that Marcus Freeman apparently has a little bit of a bad taste in Ohio State. Will Stein would be an interesting one, but Will Stein, again, he's been a little iffy this year as an offensive coordinator, so I don't know if he's going to get that. And yeah, this article saying that his resume is pretty thin for a job of that caliber. I could absolutely see Will Stein. I mean, as a Florida Gator grad, I'd love to see Will Stein at the University of Florida. I think he could do a lot of things there. But again, I don't even know if he's going to qualify for that job. So yeah, so those are all the replacements for James Franklin. Next, I'll just briefly talk about Curt Cignetti extension. I'm just pulling up the exact details of the contract. So Indiana, they extended their head coach Curt Cignetti on an 8-year, $92.8 million contract. It makes him the third highest paid head coach in college football behind Kirby Smart at $13 million a year, and Ohio State's Ryan Day at $12.5 million. I think it's a great move by Indiana. I think it proves that they are willing to invest in their college football program. They're not just a basketball school anymore, and I think this is really them trying to declare that, not just to Curt Cignetti. I don't think it's a coincidence. This is a few days after James Franklin was fired, and a few days after Curt Cignetti, a few days after Curt Cignetti's name being thrown around as a James Franklin replacement. So love this move by Indiana. I think he's a phenomenal head coach, and no one really seems to figure him out yet. He's doing a lot with not a ton in terms of he's not getting the 5-star recruits. He's getting some better transfers, but he has Fernando Mendoza really wasn't known until after he transferred. So love this move by Indiana. Love Curt Cignetti. I think he's great for college football. I think he's great for Indiana. And it's nice to see some fresh blood at the top of the college football rankings, and it's nice to see that maybe Indiana will be there for the long run. So good move by Indiana here. All right, and now we will be getting into the previews. I will change my title here. Versus Rutgers. Preview. All right, so this Oregon Rutgers preview. I'm gonna look at what time it's 12:30 Pacific time. No, I'm sorry, it's 3:30 Pacific time, 6:30 Eastern, on Saturday at Rutgers. The Ducks make their journey east for the first time this year, or second time, I guess, after the Penn State wideout. The Ducks open as a 17-point favorite. I'm going to give away a little bit of my prediction here. I think the Ducks are easily going to cover. A lot of people are thinking there's going to be a hangover, and there's a risk that this game's going to be a trap game. And I think this is just going to highlight what I've been saying about Dan Lanning all season, is that he's improved a lot as a coach from last season to this season, and that's what makes this team arguably better than last year's team. And so I don't think he's going to let them kind of have that mentality and quote-unquote let Indiana beat them twice, right? Like, I think I've seen some quotes that are coming out from players about, the coaching staff has them locked in. Bear Alexander was saying that they're just really locked in, that they've all been working extra hard this week. And I know that's typical PR stuff, but especially when a guy like Bear Alexander, who's had questionable football work ethic in the past, him saying that, I think I really believe it, and with the steps forward that Bear Alexander has taken on the field and off the field, clearly, I'm believing what he's saying. So I don't think that's going to have a hangover. I think Rutgers has a sneaky good front seven, but unfortunately it's not very deep. So once you get into later on in the game, I think the Ducks will be able to wear down that front seven. So my keys to the game: the Ducks need to run the ball. They need to run the football early, often, and effectively. They didn't do that against Indiana, and that's why they lost. They were never really able to get that run game going because of how atrociously the offensive line played, which we've seen the offensive line play well, right? Like they have it in them. Indiana was the talented front seven. I don't want to take anything away from that, but Oregon's offensive line can certainly play better than they did last Saturday. So they need to run the ball. They need to get their stars going. DeCorey Moore needs to have more than 4 touches. I wish there was a more clear defined game plan with the run game than we saw versus Indiana. If the game plan is use Jordan Davison early in the first half to wear them down, and then set the big explosive plays in the second half with Deer Hill, make that a little more obvious. Like, you have the athletes, you have the talent, like be obvious with your game plan. And I think the Ducks just absolutely have the athletes to just shove Rutgers off the ball and really wear them down. So even if it's close in the first quarter, I think especially just given the lack of depth that Rutgers has, particularly in their front seven, I don't think they're going to be able to play 4 quarters against Oregon. So I think the Ducks will be able to run the ball effectively, which is one key. I think they need to get their stars involved more than we saw. Finney needs to have more than 1 touch. DeCorian Moore needs to have more than 4 touches. D.R. Hill needs to have more touches. Like, force feed your stars the ball. Don't make the mistakes that Ohio State made early on in the year last year with Jeremiah Smith. Like, manufacture touches literally however you have to. We've seen Molstein do it. We know he can do it, so do it. Yeah, those are really my 2 big keys to the game. Just a little bit about Rutgers. They have a talented running back, like I feel like they always do. You know, think Isaiah Pacheco. He runs really violently. I'm pulling up his name now. Their quarterback is also sneaky good. Like, this is a better Rutgers team. Obviously, oh man, who's their head coach? I can't think of his name right now. He's been there like 3 different times. Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano is a great football coach. Loves Rutgers, and Rutgers loves him. And the running back, who is it? I was watching the game against Washington. So the scoreboard of the Washington game doesn't really reveal how close that game actually felt for at least the first half, if not the first 3 quarters. So Antoine Raymond, I believe, he's their leading rushing back. He just runs really violently. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry on the season with 9 touchdowns. So they really want to run the ball. They want to run the offense through him. But their quarterback, I believe it's Ethan Kaliakmanis. He's very talented. He can make throws all over the field. He's more than capable of making throws from the wide hash to the opposite sideline. So the Ducks corners will be tested, but again, they were tested last week. And Brandon Penny, I think, stepped up. So as long as Ify Odegwu can step up this week, but I mean, Rutgers doesn't have a talented wide receiver that Indiana had. So while I think this Rutgers team is more talented than a lot of people may give them credit for, they just don't have the depth. And that's what we saw in the Washington game. Was the first half and 3 quarters. Rutgers, the defensive front 7 was able to keep up and was able to kind of bottle up the Washington run game a little bit. But then the floodgates just opened later on in the game just because, again, their starters got tired. So I feel bad for the Rutgers team kind of just because I like the way they play. They're very physical. And love Gretchen as a coach, but they just, as of right now, don't have the athletes to compete. So I like I said, the game right now is sitting at 17 point. The Oregon Ducks are a 17-point favorite. A lot of people are actually picking the under. I'm going to pick the Ducks to cover. I think they come back. I think they make a big statement win. 1 second. Like, I think Dan Lanning wants to really get that Indiana loss out of his team's mouth and out of the mouth, ultimately the entire country. I'm sorry, they're 17.5-point favorites. I would still take the over on that. And the game's predicted to be about a 38-22 game. I could see the Ducks scoring 42. I don't know if they get up 20 points to Rutgers. I think it'll only be 14. I think that the defense wasn't the problem last week. And I'm not buying that Indiana only scored 30 and that Rutgers is going to somehow score 22. I'm not buying that. I'll give Rutgers 14 points. So my final score, I'm going to go 38-14 with the Ducks winning in New Jersey. Get a big win. Hopefully wash last week's taste out of their mouth. So. Now let's go into the rest of the games. There's some really good games this week. As I'm recording this, Eastern Carolina is playing Tulsa. That looks like a good one in the American. And so tomorrow night, I think Nebraska at Minnesota is a good game. I'm going to just briefly talk about it because Big Ten. I think Nebraska is a sneaky team that's not getting enough credit. Obviously, really like Dylan Raiola. They could. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a run at the Big Ten championship. I don't think they will, just because I think they're very still clearly a tier below Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon. But they are right there in that second tier. They're with USC. They're there with Illinois, I think. So I think it could be an interesting game. I think ultimately Nebraska prevails on that one. I like Louisville at Miami. I think Miami's still ultimately the better team. I think they'll prove that. But that'll be an interesting game to watch. Miami's currently a 13.5-point favorite. I'd probably take them to cover on that one. Nebraska is a 7.5-point favorite on the road at Minnesota. I think I'll take the over on that one too. I guess I'm feeling generous today. I'm feeling crazy, giving everyone the over. Or saying everyone's going to cover. LSU Vanderbilt, I don't think this one's going to be particularly close. Right now, Vanderbilt's a 2.5-point favorite. I don't think so. Even though the LSU offense has struggled, that defense is way too good. Vanderbilt's not going to score 14 points on them. So I think LSU's going to win outright on that one. Georgia Tech at Duke, that's an interesting game. I'd like to watch that one. I don't know why Duke's a 1.5 favorite. Georgia Tech will cover and beat Duke at Duke. Washington at Michigan, that's an interesting game. It's tough. Washington's offense, they're being led by Demond Williams Jr., who's a really young guy, so the Husky offense is understandably a little inconsistent. So if they play to the level that they played at the end of the game against Rutgers last week, I think they can, with Florida, Michigan, it's just going to be how tough of an environment is the Big House on a young guy like Damon Williams Jr. Michigan's a 4.5-point favorite. I think Washington pulls it out. I think Michigan's a little overrated. I've said that in my recent live streams. So I think Washington's going to go into the Big House. I don't think it'll be a pretty game, but I think Washington will prevail, kind of like they did against Maryland a few weeks ago. I like Washington in that one to win outright against Michigan. Let's see. Ohio State, Wisconsin. Luke Fickell, I love him as a head coach, but it is just not working out at Wisconsin. I think Ohio State goes into Wisconsin. I think they win big in Camp Randall. 25.5. I don't know if that's enough. I think Ohio State covers that, and I think Luke Fickell ultimately gets fired after that game. I've been saying that the last few weeks, but I think because Penn State pulled the plug on James Franklin, I think Wisconsin, maybe they'll be more inspired this week to pull the plug on Luke Fickell and hopefully get their program restarted. Michigan State at Indiana. I like Michigan State early on in the year. I thought they would be an improved team, but they are proving otherwise. And also, Indiana's just a very good team. Give me the Hoosiers probably to cover. I'm going to say they're going to cover the 27.5. Ole Miss at Georgia. So this is an interesting one. Neither team has overwhelmingly looked like a top 10 team this year. That's probably going to be a little bit of a hot take. But Georgia's been playing with fire a little bit. They have had or they've been down by double digits in the first half multiple times, and have come back to win. Obviously, the game against Tennessee at Tennessee was a barn burner, phenomenal game. They played Alabama close. Like, they're a good football team. It's just one of these times they're going to play fire and they're going to get burned. And I think being at home that helps a little bit. I honestly think Ole Miss has looked like overall the better team. Give me the Rebels. Right now, the Dogs are a 7.5-point favorite. I think the Rebels go into Sanford Stadium. I think they get a win. I think it'll be close, probably about a field goal game. But I think the Rebels will go into Georgia. Love what Trinidad Chambliss is doing. He's a great story for college football. Lane Kiffin, he's such a phenomenal play caller in that he really adapts to his players and his team's strengths. You know, if that year he's a good running team, he's going to run the ball. If they're a good passing team, they're going to pass the ball. And Trinidad Chambliss just really fits his system so well. So while their defense has definitely taken a step back from last year's team, I think the offense will be enough to go into Sanford Stadium and win that game. And what else do we have? I would like to break down Texas Tech at Arizona State. Those are two of my favorite teams to watch this year. But unfortunately, Arizona State most likely will be without Sam Leavitt, so I think Texas Tech wins that one pretty handedly. I don't know if 7.5 is enough there. I think Texas Tech will cover as well. And then I think probably the last one I'll break down, or no, I'll break down a few more. So Tennessee at Alabama. I think Tennessee, again, I know I'm probably the favorite YouTuber of all Tennessee Volunteer fans. Just kidding, they don't like me. But Tennessee going into Alabama, I think Tennessee's a fraud at number 11. They have one of the worst pass defenses in the country. They also are one of the leaders in sacks, which I think is impressive, but also just kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Let me talk about Alabama. So Ty Simpson, I think he's a good quarterback. I think people need to pump the brakes on him a little bit. I haven't seen anything like overwhelming about him. Like there's not the Joe Burrow it factor. There's not a Kyler Murray feeling unstoppable factor. There's not a, whenever Dante Moore is playing well, like the unstoppable, can make, the perfect throw at any given time in the game. I think he's a very good quarterback. So obviously he's good enough to take advantage of that Tennessee pass defense and how poorly they play, are playing with some key injuries. So I think Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard have a field day. So I think Alabama, I think they win big at home. They really want to stick that one to Tennessee. It's a big rivalry. So I think they cover 7.5. USC at Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's about 13. I don't think they belong at 13. They have a phenomenal offense, but that defense is just not playing well. And also, Notre Dame will be without their center. He was down now for an extended amount of time. USC, I really like a lot. I don't know why they're only at number 20. They lost a close one to Illinois. But that's their only loss of the season, was a close loss to Illinois, who's a very good football team, despite what happened against Indiana. They have Mekhi Lemon, who I believe is still leading the FBS in receiving yards, right? No, he's now second in receiving yards at 682. Holy crap, Danny Scudero at San Jose State is 845. But Kyle Lemon, he has that quality that it just feels unstoppable sometimes. Kind of like Devontae Smith had. I'm not saying they play similarly. I'm not comparing them as actual players. I'm just saying, like, man, I remember watching, it was the SEC championship game, I think it was against Florida, or maybe Georgia, but it was just like any time that they needed a play, you just knew it was going to Devontae Smith, and Georgia couldn't do anything about it, even with all those talented defenders that they have. And I very much get that impression from Mekhi Lemon as well. They had great running backs that they lost last week, but then they had their third string walk-on running back, what's his name, King Miller, go off for 150 rushing yards. So they can absolutely run the ball, and that's not being talked about enough. But they also have a lot of talent on the outside with Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. And then, their defense is improved. I think it'll be even better next year with some of the recruits that they're bringing in. But I think this is a good game. I think USC goes into Notre Dame, into South Bend. I think they win that one. Notre Dame's a 9.5-point favorite. Yeah, at the very least, I'd be taking USC to cover the 9.5. I like CJ Carr a lot. I like, Jeremiah Love. I like Jadarian Price. I love the weapons that they have on the outside. There's just something about the defense this year. They lost a lot of talent from last year's team. They just have not looked as impressive as they should. So I think USC goes into Notre Dame and gets a big win. And then the last one I will talk about is going to be Utah at BYU. We got the Holy War in Provo. It's tough. The only Utah game I've been able to watch this year has been the Texas Tech game, which is obviously a very tough game to watch because Texas Tech is one of the best teams in the country, right? It's a tough one. I like, if I remember correctly, isn't BYU going to be without their quarterback? I forget. I don't think so. Bear Buckmeyer. No, I think they'll have their starting quarterback. No, I'm going to change my tune. Utah, they've actually played some decent teams this year, while BYU has not. Probably the best team they've played is probably Colorado, which they struggled a little bit to beat 24-21. They played tough on last week at Arizona, 33-27. But I think this Utah team is more battle-tested. They've gotten a lot better over the course of the year. I like Devin Dampier and how explosive he is as a weapon. Give me Utah and most likely Kyle Whittingham's last Holy War. And what is the spread on that one? The spread is Utah 3.5. I'll say they cover that. Yeah, give me the Utes by, I don't know. It's 49-25, so they're predicting like a 23-26, something like that. Give me the Utes like 28-21. I think Devin Dampier, and I think they get that run game going. So, all right. Well, I want to say thank you guys for watching. As always, I'll be doing a live stream Saturday as well after the Oregon Ducks game, and also I'll be recapping all of the action that we saw throughout the day. I really enjoy doing live streams, so I'm going to try to start doing more midweek streams. Let me know if Wednesdays or Thursdays work better for you. Welcome everyone. And make sure you turn on those post notifications so you don't miss whenever I go live. I'm going to do a better job about announcing them before I go live. There's just been a lot going on. So make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those post notifications so you don't miss when I go live on Saturday, probably be around 8 o'clock. And thank you so much for watching. My name is Zach with the Sports Corner Choose Adventure Media, and I'll